Planet Reddit. Today's story is...
My sister always joked about my husband at family gatherings, but when I investigated why, I discovered a 7-year-old secret that destroyed 3 lives. Thanksgiving dinner has always been my favorite celebration. There's something special about gathering the whole family around the table, catching up on each other's lives, and sharing stories that makes me feel complete. My family, with all its peculiarities, really loves each other. However, they have a habit of taking jokes too far. I usually laugh it off, knowing they don't mean any harm. They have always been like that, joking about little things, testing the limits, but they are my family and I love them. This year, however, the jokes were not just harmless comments, but something much more unpleasant. Dinner started well, or so it seemed. My sister Olivia was in one of those moods that make her loud and joking. She has always been the life and soul of the party, making everyone laugh, and that night was no different. Dad was carving the turkey while Mum was dealing with the side dishes, and we all settled into the familiar rhythm of our dinner. The first jokes about my marriage seemed harmless, the kind of comments I was used to ignoring. Someone joked about how I had gotten a husband who cooked better than I did, since he has culinary experience. He always ended up in the kitchen during family gatherings. I laughed, because they were jokes without malice. But as the night went on, the jokes intensified and stopped being funny or light. I was about to serve myself some stuffing when Olivia smiled mischievously and let loose the big joke of the night. She said something about how her son, Aiden, had the same eyes as my husband. The room erupted in laughter before I could even react. The kind of collective laughter that grows and feeds on itself, becoming ever more thunderous. Aiden has big, expressive eyes, but comparing them to my husband's was something else entirely. I couldn't believe she had said that out loud, much less that everyone found it funny. And the laughter didn't stop quickly. Mom added that it wasn't just the eyes, that maybe Aiden had also inherited my husband's good looks. That made the laughter even louder. I looked at my husband, who was in the kitchen doorway, drying his hands with a cloth. I didn't know if he had heard, but he looked uncomfortable. I couldn't bear it. I couldn't stay there pretending that everything was fine. The room went silent. I muttered something about needing some fresh air and left, even though they tried to stop me saying it was just a joke. My husband called me when I got my coat in the hallway, but he didn't come after me. I got in my car and drove around for a while. I don't know what it is about driving, but it helps me think. At that moment, I was reflecting on everything that had happened at dinner. I kept trying to convince myself that it was nothing, just an unfortunate joke taken too far. But why did it feel like something completely different? When I finally got home, I couldn't sleep. I kept telling myself that I was overthinking things, that I was letting a bad moment ruin what should have been a good night. But no matter how much I tried to rationalize it, something still felt terribly strange. The next morning, I talked to my husband about everything that had happened. I expected him to be outraged for me and to tell me that Olivia had crossed a line and that it was good that I had left. Instead, he played it down. He said I shouldn't take it so seriously and that it was just Olivia being Olivia. He insisted that he didn't mean it that way, that it was just her way of joking. I stared at him, waiting for him to say something more, waiting for him to defend me. But he didn't. Instead, he told me I was overreacting, and that I shouldn't let a silly comment ruin my mood. The problem is that there have always been jokes in the family, but they have always been quite harmless, like I can't cook, or I had too much dessert that night. But never jokes as out of place as the one Olivia made. And the worst thing is that my own husband was downplaying the situation, trying to get me to let it go, which made him look even more suspicious. For the first time, I started to question things that I never wanted to question. He also seemed very nervous during the jokes, which increased my doubts. I asked him directly, and he replied that he was thinking too much about all this, and that I should leave the subject alone. Do you think I'm overanalyzing this? I need your opinions. Addition. I forgot to mention that the father of my sister's child is a man she was never married to. They don't have a good relationship because it was a passing affair, and they never formalized it, not even when she found out she was pregnant. This fuels my suspicions even more. Update 1. Although several days have passed, I still can't get everything that happened out of my head. What worries me most is not even the joke, but my husband's reaction. Not only was he not bothered by the comment, but he is trying to play it down as if he had something to hide. In the days that followed, I found myself remembering other jokes that I had not paid attention to, and suddenly they began to take on a different meaning. There was that moment when Olivia had joked about how she and my husband got along better than he and I ever had. At the time, I laughed it off, attributing it to her peculiar sense of humor. Then there were the looks I had noticed between them over the years. Nothing overtly inappropriate, at least not that I had perceived, but they weren't ordinary looks either. I remember one Christmas in particular where we all played charades, and Olivia and my husband were on the same team. They were practically unbeatable, guessing each other's clues with an ease that seemed almost intimate to me. Desperate to calm the unease in my mind, I began to review old photographs and social media posts. I told myself I was being ridiculous, but I couldn't stop. I examined photos of family gatherings, trying to prove myself wrong, to find something that would reassure me and convince me that I was just being paranoid. But instead, I found elements that only increased my discomfort. There they were, too close to each other, in photo after photo. Olivia's hand on his arm in one image, the two of them laughing in the background of another. The comments didn't seem so innocent now either. On rereading them, they had a strange tone. "It's always fun to go out with my favorite brother-in-law," said one of his posts, with a winking emoji. "Half of you are advising me to continue investigating, and the other half says it's not that big a deal. I'm not going to get anything out of my husband, so I think it's time to do my own digging." Update 2. Over the last few weeks, I've been reviewing our finances to see if I can find anything revealing. Many people recommended that I look through these records to find out if there had been any infidelity. And sure enough, the numbers didn't add up. Over the last few months, I had noticed unexplained transfers from my husband's account to my sister's. At first, they were subtle, small amounts here and there, but as I continued to investigate, the figures increased. When I asked him about it, he explained that Olivia was going through financial difficulties and that he was just helping her out. But I knew nothing about this, and he had never consulted me. I think that if my husband was going to help my sister financially, he should have at least mentioned it to me, don't you think? Not even my parents had mentioned to me that my sister was in trouble, and I'm sure they would know. So I hired a private investigator. It was an impulsive decision, but I needed answers if I couldn't trust my husband to provide them, as I suspected he might be deeply involved in this. The investigator began to investigate, tracking every transaction and every lead. I installed the software that the investigator had sent me on my husband's phone and laptop. A week later, I received a report that confirmed all my suspicions and more. The investigator had verified what I feared. The secret relationship had been going on for years. My husband and Olivia had been having a secret relationship, at least behind my back. I don't know about the rest of the family. And it wasn't just a one-night stand that resulted in her becoming pregnant with my husband. It's as if they had been looking for it, because they spent a lot of time having encounters. I don't think they actively planned them, but they have been having their affair without caring about anything else. There were photographs of them together, fragments of messages between them, and the results of the paternity test. It was easy to get, they only needed a few hairs. My hands trembled as I examined the report, the cold facts confirming all my fears. It was hard to breathe, hard to think. The pain was overwhelming, a crushing wave that left me feeling like I was drowning in betrayal. My heart was breaking. All I could do was stand there, looking at the damning evidence, unable to comprehend how the two people I trusted most could hurt me so deeply. I spoke to my best friend about it, and the first thing she said was that she always felt there was something strange about my husband. She never thought of telling me because it was just a hunch, but now that there was proof, she didn't have to hold back. She didn't like my sister much either, but that's always been the case since we were young and she would come to visit or stay over. What makes me feel the worst is that my sister joked about these things and gave signs of infidelity openly because she thought I wouldn't find out. As if she enjoyed knowing she could be found out, but trusted that it would never happen. As if it were a twisted game, and part of the reason for having an affair with my husband. Maybe it's time for me to play with her too, and with my husband, to show them that reckless games have disastrous consequences. Update 3. I was clear that I had to confront them with all the evidence. I wanted to know how they could be so despicable, so disloyal. I had arranged a meeting at my house with the excuse that I wanted to apologize to them for what had happened at that dinner party. My sister and my husband were on their way as they both leave work late. I had left a little earlier that day to prepare for the meeting. He had picked her up on the way from her office, of course. When they arrived, I told them to sit down, which they did reluctantly. Exchanging uncomfortable glances, I sat down in front of them. I looked them directly in the eye and told them I wanted to apologize because I knew everything and was interfering in their romantic adventure. I made it clear to them that I wasn't there to apologize for what happened the other night, but because from that moment on I was going to make their lives miserable. I took the envelope from behind my seat with everything I had been able to compile and print, and I placed it in front of them so that they had no room to say, "You're imagining things." Their faces turned pale. My husband shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes searching for those of my sister, who looked as if she were about to faint. They hadn't expected me to know, because they had been doing it for a long time and thought they were untouchable, much less that I would confront them so directly. It was my husband who finally broke the uncomfortable silence. Not for me, because I had nothing to be ashamed of, but they clearly didn't feel good about it. Their excuse for what happened was that it all started as a joke, that they could both have some kind of casual relationship because they got along so well. But the joke turned into reality when they kissed for the first time at a family gathering, and then consummated their relationship one night after work. He said they both tried to stop when they realized their mistake, but it was too late when she became pregnant. But that none of this was planned, and they didn't do it to hurt me. It just happened. I couldn't contain the anger that came over me. He dared to tell me that it wasn't planned, that it was just a mistake made as a joke. In the middle of his pathetic excuse, I demanded that he stop, because I didn't want to hear anymore. He didn't try to stop anything. He allowed it to continue for years. He lied, and now, with everything exposed, he wasn't going to get away with the excuse of the joke, or that it wasn't planned. My sister was next. She told me she was sorry, that she never wanted to hurt me. She claimed she was confused, that it was a bad moment and that she didn't know what she was doing. She also insisted that it started out as a joke, but that the joke turned into something real and they couldn't stop it. She was furious, practically shaking with rage, when I replied, "You've been having an affair with my husband for years, and now you tell me it was just a moment of madness, a joke? That's your excuse, that you're a teenager?" Even a teenager knows how to distinguish between right and wrong, and knows that that nonsense they've said as an excuse doesn't make any sense. She had no answer, only more tears. I told her that she had destroyed everything. My trust, my family, my marriage, and she did it only because she was confused, because she needed something that another man could give her. I was furious. I told her that even people who work in the adult entertainment industry have more principles than she does. She was my sister, and she had betrayed me by having a relationship with my husband. I looked back at my husband, who was trying to make himself invisible so that I wouldn't focus on him. He had no right to feel bad, because he was the cause of all this. He brought this situation on us, on our family, and no apology could change that. He told me he didn't know what to say, that he couldn't undo what he had done, but that he would do whatever it took to make things better. He was right, he couldn't undo it, and therefore there was nothing he could do. Then I asked my husband and my sister to leave immediately. My husband wanted to collect some belongings from the room, but I told him he would have to leave with what he was wearing. Neither of them protested at what I said, and they finally left. Now I just want to finalize the divorce as soon as possible and cut off any ties I may have with my sister and my husband. I know it will be more difficult with my sister because she is part of the family, and I will have to see her at different family events. At least I will establish a new policy where I will not attend unless she is not invited. And if my family does not want to accept this policy, then I will have to stay away from them too. It's time to adopt a scorched earth policy with my sister, my husband, and anyone who defends them. I'm not going to have compassion for anyone, and I'm not going to accept any kind of excuse about it being my sister or whatever. I don't have the right words to refer to her, because any term I can think of would be unfair to others. As I said, I believe that a person who works in the adult entertainment industry has more principles than my own sister, so it would be offensive to compare them. Update 4. The days after the confrontation were quiet, too quiet. I didn't want to be the victim anymore. I was tired of the sadness, the humiliation, and the anger. It was time to take control, to make them pay. I didn't just want justice. I wanted to make sure they never forgot what they had done to me. I wasn't going to let this go unpunished. My husband and my sister were going to be exposed, whether they liked it or not. Spoiler alert, they didn't like it. I no longer cared what happened to them. In fact, I was actively seeking consequences. I started by attacking their professional lives. I had contacts in the community, people who could spread the news quickly. The images of my husband and my sister, close, intimate, far beyond what could be considered innocent, were perfect for my purpose. I shared them anonymously on social media, tagging everyone, making sure they reached their workplaces, their friends, their family, and anyone connected to their lives. The response was immediate. My husband's company fired him within days because the news was negatively affecting the company. Those photographs destroyed his career. Some colleagues who had been complicit, knowing that my husband was with my sister during lunch, suddenly turned against him. Nothing like exposing an infidel and having consequences perfect. As for my sister, her boutique also suffered the impact of my revenge. Her high-profile clients, those who had spent thousands on her services, quickly left with their money, heading for what some called in the comments on her business's social media, a place run by someone with principles, not someone who destroys homes. I take satisfaction in knowing that her business went bankrupt. And I didn't care. I know some people will disapprove of my revenge, but it's little compared to what they did to me. I heard about their misfortune from my relatives, who clearly took my side, albeit in an extreme way, which I didn't find entirely appropriate. One of my cousins, who quickly took my side from the day of the prank when he saw how devastated I was, went to school and told everyone what had happened. That Aiden was the son of an affair, that his mother had betrayed his sister, and had been seeing her husband all those years. She told them everything, even going so far as to suggest that the child had known who his real father was all along, but he came to my house without shame, acting as if he were innocent. The gossip turned to ridicule and then to bullying. The poor child became the butt of all the cruel jokes. His schoolmates bullied him relentlessly, asking him if he had always known the truth, or if his father had ever told him. The taunts did not stop. They spread throughout the school. His life became unbearable. I felt guilty that this had gone so far, as I never asked for the child to be involved in all this. I even spoke to my cousin to try and stop the situation, but it was too late. My cousin has tried to justify it by saying that the child knew, and I have a feeling that it's true. But I still feel sorry for him because he's just a child, and he shouldn't suffer for this. He could have known, but what would he have done? It's not his fault who his parents were. The divorce proceedings were brutal. My lawyer knew exactly how to take advantage of the years of deception. The affair was not only a betrayal, it was the basis of my case. A second paternity test confirmed that the child was my husband's son, and that gave me all the advantage I needed. I had a right to everything: the house, the money, the joint accounts. My husband was left with nothing but his shame and the consequences of his own decisions. But it wasn't over. Far from it. My father, the man who had always been a stoic figure in our family, finally lost his composure when my sister returned begging for forgiveness. He slapped her across the face, right in front of his son, whom she had used as a protective shield, metaphorically speaking. She thought my parents would forgive her because the boy was present. But my father said he did it anyway, because that boy deserves to learn that bad actions must be punished, since growing up with those parents he probably won't learn many of those lessons. My father called it the worst mistake of his life. My mother didn't say a word, she just stood there. She knew that for my father to act that way, the betrayal must have been immense. I was there when it happened. He had sold my house and was looking for a new one. His attempt at reconciliation and at making things right was nothing more than a last-ditch effort to save their reputations. Nobody cared about his apologies. Nobody wanted to hear his pleas for forgiveness. My family supported me, even though they were prepared for them not to. Even my mother said that I was her daughter before Aiden was her grandson, and that she would protect me, even if it meant distancing herself from her grandson. I know they don't want to stop seeing Aiden, but they are committed to being on my side. That is something I value enormously. I don't know what will happen with them now that they are free to play the most intimate jokes they can imagine. They are free to do so because my ex-husband is no longer married to me. But I will have to leave that for another update, when events develop further. Update 5. For those of you asking for an update on my story, here it is. I don't know if there are many of you, but at least the comment requesting it received quite a few votes. My sister and my ex-husband moved to a new city shortly after the divorce to start a new life, although that life did not include their son, who they left behind, as they said they did not have the means to look after him. At least that was the excuse they used for leaving him at my ex-in-law's house. Don't worry, the child has been changing schools to avoid further bullying, while my parents can visit him at my ex-in-law's house whenever they want. But let's go back to Olivia and my ex for a moment. They moved and started looking for jobs, which they got, a new city, without the rumors about their actions and with the possibility of starting from scratch. Everything was going well until someone spread the rumors again at their jobs. I think it was the same cousin who took revenge too seriously. This resulted in my ex being fired because many of his colleagues complained that they didn't want to work with him. My sister also faced difficulties, but they didn't get to the point of her being fired. However, after my ex couldn't get another job, they ended their relationship and he moved even further away, practically to the other side of the country. Thus ended their great love story, which began as a joke and ended up being just that, a joke. One situation that made my father laugh a lot was when my sister called to ask if she could move back because she was feeling very lonely in the new city. She wanted to stay with my parents for a while, together with Aiden, while she got back on her feet by opening a new business. But my father replied that the joke was very funny because it wasn't going to happen and that it was absurd that she was asking. My parents already spend time with Aiden, so they don't need to take her in for him to be with them. He suggested that she could at least start by being a mother to the child and take him to live with her. That way, she wouldn't feel alone and her son would have a mother around. But Olivia argued that it would be too much work for her to do it alone, with a low-paying job and a mediocre salary, which is why she wanted to live with my parents temporarily and start something that would generate more income, like her boutique. I have a suggestion for her. She could start working in the adult entertainment industry as she would also learn some values, because she currently has none.